Commander Marcus Cole stared at the burning ship through the viewport of his small patrol frigate, and his hands moved across the controls before his mind could catch up with what he was doing. The distress signal had come from a Valari diplomatic vessel, and every instinct in his body screamed at him to respond. The Valari were not allies of humanity, not enemies either. Just another species that looked at humans and saw primitives who had only recently discovered faster-than-light travel. They were tall and elegant beings with skin that glowed softly in shades of blue and violet. 4 slender arms that moved with a grace humans could never match. And eyes that seemed to hold thousands of years of wisdom. None of that mattered to Marcus right now. What mattered was that someone was dying out there, and he was the only one close enough to help. Command. This is Patrol 7. He spoke into his communicator as he pushed his ship toward the crippled vessel. I am responding to a distress call from a Valari ship under attack, requesting backup. The response came back filled with static, telling him the backup was at least 40 minutes away. Marcus knew 40 minutes was too long, so he grabbed his rifle, checked his sight on, and strapped his combat blade to his thigh. The docking procedure was rough because half the Valari ship was already on fire, but Marcus managed to force his way through an emergency airlock. The moment he stepped inside, the smell of smoke and death filled his lungs. He moved through the corridors like a ghost, his training taking over completely. The first assassin came around a corner and died before he even saw Marcus, a single shot to the head dropping him instantly. The second and third fell just as quickly. These were not ordinary criminals. Marcus recognized the markings on their armor as belonging to House Velshara, one of the noble factions within the Valari sovereignty that was known for political violence. This was an assassination attempt, and whoever they wanted dead was important enough to risk a war by the time Marcus reached the central chamber of the ship. His rifle had run dry. He dropped it without hesitation and drew his sidearm. Continuing forward with the same deadly purpose, he found them in what looked like a throne room. 6 assassins surrounded a wounded Valari female who wore robes of pure white stained with her own luminescent blood. Even injured and cornered, she held herself with an authority that told Marcus exactly who she was. Queen Silidor of the Valari sovereignty, ruler of 100 worlds, was about to die. Marcus did not announce himself or demand surrender. He simply started shooting. 4 of the assassins fell before they understood what was happening, and when his sidearm clicked empty, he was already moving. The 5th assassin turned to face him, blade raised high, but Marcus was faster. He drew his combat knife and drove it through the gap in the alien's armor with a brutal efficiency that made the queen gasp. The 6th assassin tried to run, but Marcus caught him by the throat and slammed him into the wall with enough force to crack the metal plating behind him. The alien slumped to the ground and did not get up. Marcus stood in the center of the room, breathing hard, surrounded by the bodies of 12 assassins he had killed in less than 5 minutes. His hands were covered in blood, both red and blue, and his uniform was torn in several places where blades had come too close. The queen stared at him with wide eyes that glowed like twin moons. "You are human," she whispered, her voice carrying both surprise and something that might have been fear. "Commander Marcus Cole." "United Terran Defense Corps," he replied, already moving toward her to assess her injuries. "Can you walk, Your Majesty? We need to get you to my ship before more of them arrive." She could not walk. The wound in her side was too severe. So Marcus did what any soldier would do when someone needed saving. He picked her up and carried her. The journey back to his ship was a nightmare of fire and collapsing corridors. Twice more, assassins appeared from the shadows, and twice more, Marcus killed them while still holding the queen in his arms. His body moved on pure instinct, years of training making him a weapon more deadly than anything the Valari had ever seen. They were 10 meters from the airlock when the explosion happened. Marcus did not think. He simply turned his back to the blast and wrapped his body around the queen like a shield. The force of it threw them both forward, and Marcus felt fire tear across his back and the side of his face, but the queen was unharmed. He managed to get them both through the airlock and seal it behind them before his legs finally gave out. The last thing he remembered was the queen's glowing face hovering above him, her 4 hands pressing against his wounds, and her voice calling out words he could not understand when Marcus woke up. He was not on his ship. He lay in a bed softer than anything he had ever felt, surrounded by walls of crystal that let in light from 3 different suns. Medical devices he did not recognize hummed around him, and when he tried to sit up, a wave of dizziness forced him back down. "You should not move yet, Commander." The voice belonged to a Volari male in healer's robes who approached with careful steps, as if afraid Marcus might attack him. "Where am I?" Marcus demanded, his voice rough from weeks of disuse. "How long have I been unconscious?" "You are in the Royal Medical Wing of the Sovereignty Palace," the healer answered. "You have been healing for 23 of your Earth days. The burns on your back were severe, and the damage to your face required extensive reconstruction." Marcus raised a hand to his face and felt the ridge of a scar running from his temple to his jaw. He would carry that mark for the rest of his life. "The Queen," he asked, "is she safe?" "She is more than safe, Commander. She is alive because of you, and she has not forgotten that debt." Before Marcus could ask what that meant, the doors to the medical chamber opened, and Queen Selida entered with a procession of guards and advisors behind her. She looked fully healed, her white robes now unstained, her luminescent skin glowing with health, but her eyes carried a weight that had not been there before. "Leave us," she commanded, and everyone obeyed without question when they were alone. The Queen approached his bed and looked down at him with an expression Marcus could not read. "You saved my life, Commander Marcus Cole," she said. "You killed 12 of my enemies and carried me through fire. And you used your own body as a shield when the explosion came. No one has ever done such a thing for me. I was just doing my job." "Your Majesty," Marcus replied, trying to sit up again and failing. "No," the Queen said firmly. "What you did goes beyond duty. Among my people, such an act creates a bond that cannot be ignored. I have invoked Veltheron, Commander." "Do you know what that means?" Marcus did not know, and the Queen's next words changed his life forever. "It means you are bound to serve as royal protector to the crown until the debt is repaid. You saved my life, so now your life belongs to me." Marcus felt the world shift beneath him as he understood what she was saying. He was not going home. He was not returning to Earth or his command or anything he had known before. "There is something else you should know," the Queen added, her voice softer now, almost sad. "When my people investigated the wreckage of your ship's communication array, they found your final transmission to Terran Command. The damage made it impossible for them to receive your full message, and I am sorry, Commander. But your people believe you are dead." Marcus stared at her in silence as the truth settled into his bones like ice. He was a dead man now, a ghost trapped in an alien palace. Bound by laws he did not understand to a queen he had saved without thinking, and somewhere far away, Earth mourned a hero who was still breathing. 2 years passed in the crystal halls of the Sovereignty Palace, and Marcus Cole became something the Volari had never seen before. A human who refused to break. He stood behind the Queen's throne during every court session, silent and watchful, his scarred face a constant reminder of what he had done to save her. The nobles whispered about him when they thought he could not hear, calling him the human beast and the primitive guardian, and other names that would have angered a lesser man. Marcus heard every word and showed no reaction. He had learned that patience was a weapon more powerful than any blade in those 2 years. He mastered the Volari language until he spoke it better than some nobles who had studied for decades. He learned their customs and rituals, their complicated system of honor and debt, their ancient blade dances that were part combat and part art. When Valari warriors challenged him to duels, thinking to humiliate the human, Marcus defeated them with a grace that left the court speechless, but he never killed during these duels, not once. He always stopped his blade a breath away from the killing strike and bowed to his opponent with respect they had not shown him. This confused the Valari. More than anything else about him, they did not understand how a creature capable of such violence could also show such restraint. They did not understand how someone they considered primitive could learn their ways faster than their own children. They did not understand Marcus Cole at all, and that frightened them. One person watched him more closely than anyone else. Princess Alindra was the queen's only daughter and the heir to the sovereignty throne. She was young by Valari standards, barely past her first century, with skin that glowed a soft shade of violet and eyes like captured starlight. She had been trained from birth to hide her emotions, to wear a mask of royal composure that never slipped. But when she watched Marcus Cole, that mask became harder to maintain. She first noticed him during a court session 3 months after his arrival, when a minor noble accused a servant of theft and demanded the servant's hands be removed as punishment. Marcus had stepped forward, his voice calm but carrying an edge that silenced the entire chamber. "The evidence does not support this accusation," he had said, and then proceeded to dismantle the noble's case with logic and observation that left no room for argument. The servant was freed, and the noble was left humiliated. Alindra had expected Marcus to gloat or demand recognition, but instead he simply returned to his post behind her mother's throne and resumed his silent vigil. She began watching him after that, observing his habits and his choices, and the way he moved through their world like water flowing around stones. She noticed how he treated servants with the same respect he showed nobility, always using their names, always meeting their eyes. She saw how he spent his rare rest hours in the palace library, reading Valari poetry with a dedication that surprised the scholars who found him there. But what she noticed most was the loneliness, late at night, when the palace slept and the 3 moons of their world cast silver light through the crystal walls. Alindra would sometimes walk the gardens to clear her mind. More than once, she found Marcus there, standing alone, his eyes fixed on a distant point in the sky. She learned from the astronomers which star he was looking at. It was Sol, the son of Earth. So far away that its light took years to reach them. He was looking at home. The moment that changed everything came during a diplomatic gathering when ambassadors from a dozen worlds filled the throne room. One ambassador, a pompous creature from a species that considered themselves superior to all others, noticed Marcus standing guard and decided to make a scene. "Is this the famous human pet I have heard about?" the ambassador announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. "How amusing that the great Valari sovereignty keeps a trained animal to guard their queen. Tell me, does he do tricks? Can he fetch and roll over?" Laughter rippled through the crowd, and Marcus remained perfectly still, his expression unchanged. But Alindra felt something crack inside her chest before she understood what she was doing. She had stepped forward, placing herself between Marcus and the ambassador. Her royal composure shattered into 1,000 pieces. "You will not speak of him that way," she said, and her voice carried a fury that silenced every laugh. "This man killed 12 assassins to save my mother. He carried her through fire and used his own body as a shield. He has more honor in one finger than you have in your entire species." The ambassador stared at her with wide eyes, clearly shocked that a princess would defend a human so fiercely when you have done even 1/10 of what Commander Cole has done. Alindra continued, each word sharp as a blade. "Then perhaps you will have earned the right to speak. Until then, I suggest you close your mouth before I forget that diplomacy requires me to tolerate fools." The silence that followed was absolute. Queen Siliva watched her daughter with an expression that mixed surprise with something that might have been understanding, but she said nothing to intervene. The ambassador quickly made excuses and retreated, and the gathering continued as if nothing had happened, but everyone in that room remembered what they had witnessed. The Ice Princes of the Volari had shown emotion for the first time in anyone's memory, and she had shown it for a human that night. Marcus found Alindra in the gardens. She stood beneath a tree that bloomed with flowers of pure light. Her forearms wrapped around herself as if she was cold. Her face turned away so he could not see her expression. "Your Highness," he said, his voice careful and respectful. "I wanted to thank you for what you said today. You did not have to defend me." "Yes, I did," she replied without turning around. "They had no right to speak of you that way." "No one does. I have heard worse," Marcus said, moving to stand beside her but maintaining a proper distance. "Words cannot hurt me, Your Highness." "They hurt me," Alindra whispered. And finally she turned to face him, and Marcus saw something in her eyes that he had never expected to find. Tears, luminescent and glowing, running down her cheeks like streams of starlight. "Why do you stay?" she asked, her voice breaking on the question. "My mother told me the debt could be paid in other ways." "You could have asked for a ship and gone home years ago. Why do you stay in a place where they treat you like an animal?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment, considering the question and the princess who asked it. When he spoke, his words were soft and honest in a way he had not allowed himself to be in years. "At first, I stayed because of duty. I gave my word to serve, and where I come from, that means something. But now," he paused, struggling to find the right words, "I stay because I have come to love this place, even the parts that do not love me back. I stay because your people have so much beauty in their culture, their art, their poetry. I stay because leaving would feel like running away. And I have never run from anything in my life." Alindra stared at him as if seeing him for the first time. "Tell me about Earth," she said suddenly. "Tell me about your home." "I want to understand," so Marcus told her. He spoke of rain falling from gray skies and the way it felt against human skin. He described oceans so vast that you could sail for weeks and never see land. He painted pictures with words of forests where ancient trees grew taller than palace towers. He told her about coffee, bitter and warm, and the way humans gathered in small shops to drink it and share stories. He explained music, the 1,000 different ways his people had found to create beauty from sound. Alindra listened to every word with wonder in her glowing eyes, and when he was done, she told him about herself. She spoke of the pressure of being heir to 100 worlds, of the loneliness of wearing a mask every moment of every day, of the fear that she would never be good enough to follow her mother. "I have never told anyone these things," she admitted when she was finished. "I have never trusted anyone enough to be this honest." Marcus looked at her, this alien princess with her glowing skin and her ancient eyes, and he realized that loneliness was a language that needed no translation. "Your secrets are safe with me." "Your Highness," he said simply. Alindra smiled, the first real smile she had ever shown him. "Call me Alindra," she said. "When we are alone like this, I do not want to be a princess. I just want to be myself." From that night forward, the gardens became their place. They met beneath the light-blooming trees and talked until the moon set. And slowly, without either of them fully understanding what was happening, something began to grow between them, something that would change everything. Marcus first noticed the pattern 3 months after his secret meetings with Alindra began. Small things that most would overlook, but his training had taught him that small things often led to big problems. A servant who lingered too long near the queen's private chambers. A guard who switched his shift at the last moment without proper authorization. communication signals that spiked in unusual patterns during the deepest hours of night. The Valari thought humans were primitive, but they did not understand that humanity had survived for thousands of years by being suspicious of everything. Paranoia was built into human bones, and Marcus had more reason to be paranoid than most. He began his investigation quietly, using skills that no Valari knew he possessed. His people had fought wars in shadows before they ever reached the stars, and Marcus had been trained in every dark art of intelligence gathering. He knew how to follow without being seen, how to listen without being heard, how to make technology reveal secrets it was meant to keep. What he found made his blood run cold. HFY, the same faction that had tried to assassinate Queen Silitha 2 years ago, had not been destroyed. They had simply gone underground, and in the shadows, they had grown stronger. Their network stretched through every level of the palace, from servants to guards to nobles who smiled at the queen while plotting her death. But the assassination attempt on the queen had only been the beginning. Their true goal was much larger. They planned to murder Alendra. The princess was the key to everything. Without her, the royal line would end, and House Velshara could claim the throne through ancient laws that most had forgotten. They had spent years positioning their pieces, and now they were ready to make their final move. The attack would come during the Festival of Twin Moons, the most sacred celebration in Valari culture. The entire royal family would be exposed during the ceremonial procession, surrounded by crowds that could hide 1,000 assassins. It was the perfect moment to strike. Marcus had less than 2 weeks to stop them. He worked without rest, surviving on small amounts of sleep and the stubborn human refusal to give up. He infiltrated their communication network and learned the names of every conspirator. He identified their weapons caches and their escape routes and the signal that would trigger the attack. Then he began to dismantle them, one piece at a time. The first conspirator disappeared from his post and was found 3 days later, locked in a storage room with evidence of his crimes attached to his chest. The second confessed everything to the authorities after. Marcus paid him a visit in the night and explained exactly what would happen if he did not cooperate. The third and fourth simply vanished, and no one ever found out what happened to them. House Velshara grew nervous. Someone was hunting them, and they did not know who, but Marcus made a mistake that would cost him dearly. He was so focused on protecting Alendra that he failed to realize how much danger he was putting himself in. The leaders of the conspiracy figured out that the human protector was responsible for their losses, and they decided to accelerate their plans. The Festival of Twin Moons arrived with Marcus, still working to uncover the final details of the attack. He had stopped most of the conspiracy, but he knew some assassins remained hidden. Waiting for their moment, he stayed close to Alendra during the procession, his eyes scanning every face in the crowd, his hand never far from his weapon. She walked beside her mother in ceremonial robes of silver and white, beautiful and regal, and completely unaware of the danger that surrounded her. Marcus had not told her about the conspiracy. He did not want her to be afraid, and he believed he could handle it alone. That belief nearly killed them both. The attack came without warning. One moment the crowd was cheering, and the next moment chaos erupted as dozens of figures in black emerged from hidden positions and rushed toward the royal family. Marcus moved faster than thought itself. He drew his blade and placed himself between Alendra and the first wave of attackers, cutting them down with brutal efficiency. His body moved in patterns burned into muscle memory by years of training. Each strike, precise and deadly, blood sprayed across his face, both red and blue mixed together. But Marcus did not slow down. "Get her to safety," he shouted to the royal guards. But they were already overwhelmed by the sheer number of attackers. House Velshara had committed everything to this moment. Throwing hundreds of warriors into the assault, Marcus fought through them like a storm made flesh, an assassin slipped past his guard and slashed his left arm. But Marcus barely felt the pain. Another cut across his back, and he responded by driving his blade through the attacker's throat. Wounds opened across his body, each one ignored as he focused on the only thing that mattered, protecting her. He lost count of how many he killed. The number did not matter. Only the next enemy mattered, and the next, and the next. His body was failing, losing blood faster than any human should survive. But his will refused to break. Alindra watched with horror as the man she had come to care for fought like a demon unleashed. She had seen warriors before, but nothing in her long life had prepared her for the savage beauty of Marcus Cole at war. He was terrifying and magnificent and dying in front of her eyes. The crowd scattered as the battle raged, and soon only the attackers and defenders remained. Marcus had carved a circle of death around Alindra, a barrier of bodies that no assassin had managed to cross, but one remained. The leader of House Volshara himself stepped forward, a master warrior who had trained for centuries. He moved with the liquid grace of a true predator, and his blade gleamed with poison that would kill anyone it touched. "You have cost me everything, human," the Lord hissed. "But I will still complete my mission. I will kill the princes, and then I will make you watch as everything you fought for burns." Marcus was barely standing. Blood poured from a dozen wounds, and his vision was starting to blur at the edges. Any normal person would have collapsed long ago, but Marcus was not normal. He was human, and humans did not know how to quit. "You want her," Marcus growled, raising his blade with arms that screamed in protest. "Come and take her." The duel that followed would become legend. The Volshara Lord was faster and stronger and healthier. But Marcus fought with something that could not be measured. He fought with the desperation of a man protecting what he loved, with the stubbornness of a species that had clawed its way from caves to stars, with every ounce of will that his battered body could produce. The Lord's poisoned blade found Marcus again and again, leaving trails of fire across his skin, but Marcus kept coming. He absorbed the pain and transformed it into fury, each wound making him more dangerous rather than less. Finally, with his last reserve of strength, Marcus saw the opening he needed. He let the Lord's blade sink into his left hand, trapping it there with his own flesh, and then he drove his own blade forward with his right. The strike was perfect, sliding between the Lord's ribs and piercing his heart. The leader of House Volshara fell, and the conspiracy died with him. Marcus stood over the body, swaying on his feet, his hands still wrapped around the poisoned blade buried in his palm. Around him lay 23 dead conspirators, and beyond them stood an army of witnesses who had just watched a single human destroy an entire assassination force. Alindra rushed to his side as his legs finally gave out, catching him before he hit the ground. Her 4 arms wrapped around him, heedless of the blood that stained her ceremonial robes. "You fool," she whispered, tears streaming down her glowing face. "You absolute fool. You could have died." "Worth it," Marcus managed to say, looking up at her with eyes that struggled to focus. "You are worth it." He lost consciousness in her arms, and for the second time in his life, he woke up in the Royal Medical Wing. This time, however, Queen Selitha did not come alone. "The conspiracy has been destroyed thanks to you," the Queen said, standing beside his bed with Alindra at her side. "House Volshara is finished. Their lands and titles have been stripped. Their allies have been arrested. The threat is ended." Marcus nodded weakly, too tired to speak. "You have done more than protect me," the Queen continued, her voice carrying a weight of formality that Marcus recognized. "You have saved my daughter, my only child, the future of my people. There is no debt great enough to repay what you have done." She took a deep breath, and Marcus saw something change in her ancient eyes. "The Veltheron is fulfilled, Commander Marcus Cole. You are free. Your debt is paid." If you wish to return to Earth, I will provide you with a ship and anything else you require." Marcus felt the words settle into his chest like stones. He was free after 2 years. He could finally go home. He looked at Alindra and saw her fighting to keep her composure. Her hands clenched at her sides, her luminescent tears threatening to fall. She would not ask him to stay. She was too proud for that, and she respected him too much to put that burden on him. But her eyes told him everything her words could not. "Thank you, Your Majesty," Marcus said quietly. "I will need some time to think about what comes next." The Queen nodded and left without another word. But Alindra lingered for a moment longer. "Get some rest," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "We can talk when you are stronger." Then she was gone, and Marcus was alone with the most difficult decision of his life. The news of Marcus Cole's freedom spread through the palace like fire through dry grass. By morning, everyone knew that the human protector was no longer bound by Volthorin, and the reactions were as divided as the Volari people themselves. Some celebrated, eager to see the primitive leave their world and never return. Others felt a strange sense of loss, having grown accustomed to the scarred human who stood so faithfully behind their queen. A few, mostly the servants and common folk who had seen his kindness firsthand, actually mourned, but no one's reaction compared to that of Princess Alindra. She retreated to her private chambers and did not emerge for 3 days. Her attendants reported that she refused food and spoke to no one. They heard strange sounds from behind her locked doors, sounds that might have been weeping or might have been something else entirely. The Queen watched her daughter's suffering with knowing eyes but said nothing. There were some lessons that could only be learned through pain, and some truths that could only be discovered when everything seemed lost. Meanwhile, Terran Command had learned that their lost hero was alive. The news came through diplomatic channels that had been dormant for years. A human soldier, presumed dead, had survived and was being released from service to the Volari crown. The response was immediate and overwhelming. A full diplomatic vessel was dispatched to retrieve Commander Marcus Cole, carrying journalists and military officials and representatives from the United Terran government. They wanted to bring their hero home in a manner befitting his legendary status, to parade him through the streets of Earth and show the galaxy that humanity produced men like him. Marcus received the notification while still recovering in the medical wing. The message was formal and congratulatory, full of words about duty and honor and the pride of all humanity. It should have made him happy, but instead it left him feeling hollow. He spent his recovery time thinking about what waited for him on Earth. Parades and medals and interviews that would never end. Politicians who wanted to use his story for their own purposes. A military that would either promote him into meaningless desk work or send him on another mission that might actually kill him this time. He thought about his family, but there was little to think about. His parents had died years before he left Earth, and he had no siblings or spouse or children. The military had been his family, and Earth had been his home. But 2 years among the Volari had changed something inside him. He also thought about Alindra. He thought about her smile in the garden and her tears when she defended him, and the way her eyes had looked when she held him after the battle. He thought about their conversations beneath the light-blooming trees and the secrets she had trusted him with, and the way she made him feel less alone than he had ever felt in his entire life. But he pushed those thoughts away because they were dangerous. She was a princess, and he was a human, and their worlds could never truly merge. Whatever they had shared was a beautiful accident that could not last. The day Marcus left the medical wing, he went to the Queen to formally accept her gift of freedom. He would take a small ship and join the Terran vessel waiting at the edge of Volari space. He would return to Earth and resume his life and try to forget the alien world that had become more like home than home itself. Queen Salida received him in her private audience chamber. without guards or advisors or anyone else who might witness what she wanted to say. "You have made your decision," she observed, studying him with eyes that had seen centuries of court intrigue. "I have." "Your Majesty," Marcus replied, standing at attention out of habit. "I am grateful for everything you have given me. But it is time for me to return to my people." "Is it?" the Queen asked. And something in her tone made Marcus pause. "Is that truly what you want, Commander? Or is it simply what you believe you should want?" Marcus did not know how to answer that question, so he remained silent. "My daughter has not left her chambers since your freedom was announced," the Queen continued, her voice softer now. "She believes she is hiding her feelings. But a mother always knows. She loves you, Commander, though she will never admit it. And I suspect you love her as well." "Your Majesty," Marcus started. But the Queen raised one of her 4 hands to stop him. "I am not asking you to stay," she said. "That is not my decision to make, and I would not take that choice from you. But I want you to understand something before you leave." She moved closer. And for a moment, Marcus saw not a queen, but simply a mother worried about her child. "Alindra has never connected with anyone the way she has connected with you. She has spent her entire life alone in a crowd, surrounded by people who wanted her power or her position, but never her. You are the first person who has ever seen her as simply herself. And I do not think she knows how to survive losing that." Marcus felt the weight of those words settle into his chest. But he forced himself to maintain his composure. "What would you have me do?" "Your Majesty," he asked quietly, "stay out of obligation rather than choice." "That would not be fair or to me." "No," the Queen agreed. "It would not. But I want you to be certain that you are leaving for the right reasons, not because you believe you have no other choice. The Veltheran is fulfilled, but that does not mean you cannot stay if you wish. There would be a place for you here, Marcus Cole, if you wanted one." She turned away. The conversation clearly over, and Marcus left without another word. He spent his last night in the palace walking the gardens alone, saying goodbye to the places that had become dear to him over the past 2 years. The library where he had read Valari poetry, the training grounds where he had learned their blade dances, the crystal corridors where the light of 3 suns painted everything in shades of gold and rose. And finally, he came to the place beneath the light-blooming tree where he and Alindra had shared so many conversations. She was waiting for him there. Alindra looked terrible, her luminescent skin dimmed with exhaustion and grief. Her violet glow faded to something pale and fragile. She had finally left her chambers, and it was clear that the past 3 days had cost her dearly. "I heard you are leaving tomorrow," she said, her voice carefully controlled. "I wanted to say goodbye, Alindra," Marcus started. But she shook her head sharply. "Do not. Do not say anything kind or gentle or understanding. I cannot bear it right now. Just let me speak." He nodded and remained silent. "I have spent 3 days trying to understand why this hurts so much," Alindra continued, her words tumbling out faster and faster. "I have told myself that you were just a human, just a protector, just someone who happened to save my mother and then my life. I have told myself that what we shared was nothing more than friendship, nothing that should make me feel like I am dying inside." She laughed bitterly, the sound carrying no humor at all. "I have told myself all of these things, and none of them are true. The truth is that I love you, Marcus Cole. I love you in a way I did not think I was capable of loving anyone. I love your honor and your courage and your terrible stubbornness. I love the way you look at the stars and the way you treated me like a person instead of a princess. I love everything about you, and you are leaving, and I do not know how to survive that." Tears were flowing freely down her face now, luminescent streams that glowed against her dim skin. "But I will not ask you to stay," she finished, her voice dropping to barely a whisper. "I will not put that burden on you." You have already given enough of yourself to my family. Go home, Marcus. Go home and find happiness and try to forget about the foolish alien princess who loved you too much to let you go and too much to make you stay." Marcus looked at her, his heart breaking in his chest, and he opened his mouth to respond. But before he could speak, Alindra's expression changed. Something shifted in her eyes, a light returning to their depths, and her posture straightened with sudden determination. Marcus recognized that look. It was the same look she had worn when she defended him against the ambassador. The same fierce resolve that lurked beneath her composed exterior. "No," she said, her voice suddenly strong and clear. "No, I will not let this happen. I will not stand here and watch you walk away when every part of me is screaming to stop you. Alindra, what are you?" "I invoke Selvathani," she declared, the words ringing through the garden like a bell. Marcus froze as recognition of the term struck him. Selvathani was an ancient Valari rite, older than the sovereignty itself. It allowed a member of the royal family to claim an individual as their personal guardian, bound not by debt but by choice and something deeper than duty, that the ritual had not been invoked in 300 years. And its implications were staggering. "You cannot do this," Marcus said, his voice shaking. "This will cause a scandal. The court will—" "I do not care about the court," Alindra interrupted, stepping toward him with fire in her eyes. "I do not care about scandal or tradition or what anyone thinks. I only care about you, and I refuse to let you leave without fighting for you. The Selvathani requires my acceptance," Marcus pointed out, his mind racing to understand what was happening. If you refuse, you are free to go," Alindra admitted. "But until you formally refuse before the High Council, you cannot leave Valari space. It is an ancient law, and even my mother cannot override it." Marcus stared at her in disbelief as the truth of the situation became clear. The days following Alindra's invocation of Selvathani were the most turbulent that sovereignty had seen in generations. The Terran ambassador stormed through the palace demanding audiences with anyone who would listen. He called the ancient rite a violation of galactic law, a barbaric practice that had no place in civilized society, and a kidnapping of a Terran citizen. He threatened diplomatic consequences and trade sanctions and even military action if Commander Marcus Cole was not released immediately. The Valari High Council was equally divided. Some members supported Alindra's right to invoke the ancient tradition, citing precedents from the earliest days of their civilization. Others called for the princess to be stripped of her title for bringing such shame upon the royal house. Queen Silitha remained silent throughout the debates, watching and waiting and refusing to intervene. And through it all, Marcus Cole found himself trapped in the palace with nothing to do but think. He thought about Earth and the life that waited for him there. He pictured himself returning as a hero, celebrated and honored, and then gradually forgotten as the next story captured the public's attention. He imagined desk jobs and empty apartments and nights spent staring at the sky, wondering what might have been. He also thought about staying. He imagined a life in the Crystal Palace, learning more of Valari culture and growing old in gardens where the trees bloomed with pure light. He pictured himself standing beside Alindra as she became queen, supporting her through the challenges of ruling 100 worlds. Both futures felt real. Both futures felt possible. And Marcus did not know which one he truly wanted on the 7th day of his confinement. He requested a private audience with Alindra. She came to him in a small chamber, overlooking the garden where they had shared so many conversations. She wore simple robes instead of her formal attire, and her luminescent glow had returned to its normal violet intensity. "You wanted to see me," she said, standing near the door as if afraid to come closer. "I have questions," Marcus replied, gesturing for her to sit across from him at a small table. "Questions I should have asked before, but I was too confused to think clearly, Alindra said. Her four hands folded carefully in her lap. Her eyes fixed on his face with an intensity that made his chest tight. Why did you really invoke Salvathani? Marcus asked. And I want the truth, not the romantic version you gave me in the garden. I want to understand what was going through your mind. Alindra was quiet for a long moment. Considering the question, I panicked, she admitted finally. Her voice small. I watched you walking away, and I knew that if you left, I would spend the rest of my very long life regretting that I let you go. I thought about all the proper ways I could ask you to stay, and I knew none of them would work because you are too stubborn and too honorable to stay just because someone asked. She looked down at her folded hands. So I did something improper. I used an ancient law to force you to stop and think. I know it was wrong, and I know I have caused problems for everyone. And I know you have every right to hate me for trapping you this way. I do not hate you. Marcus said quietly. I'm not sure I could ever hate you. Then what do you feel? Alindra asked. Looking up at him with desperate hope in her starlight eyes, Marcus stood and walked to the window, staring out at the garden below. The light-blooming tree where they had spent so many nights was visible from here, its branches swaying in a gentle breeze. I feel like I am standing at the edge of two different lives, he said slowly, and I do not know which way to jump. On one side is Earth, my home world, the place where I was born and raised, and where everyone looks like me and speaks my language and understands my references. On the other side is this world, this beautiful alien place that I never expected to love, but somehow he turned back to face her. When you invoked Salvathani, my first reaction was anger. I felt like you had taken my choice away, like you were controlling me the same way everyone else in this palace tries to control things. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized something important. He moved closer, sitting down across from her again. If I truly wanted to leave, I would have refused the Salvathani immediately. The process takes 1 day at most. I could have stood before the High Council and rejected your claim and been on a ship to Earth before the sun set. But I did not do that. Instead, I spent a week thinking and wondering and questioning everything I thought I knew about myself. Alindra's breath caught in her throat as she understood what he was saying. You did not trap me. Marcus continued. You gave me permission to consider something I had been too afraid to consider on my own. You gave me an excuse to stay when I was convincing myself that I had to go. Marcus, Alindra whispered, leaning forward in her chair. What are you saying? He reached across the table and took one of her hands in both of his. Her skin was cool and smooth, her fingers delicate against his scarred and calloused palms. I'm saying that I have spent my entire life doing what I thought I was supposed to do. I became a soldier because it was expected. I accepted dangerous missions because it was my duty. I was ready to return to Earth because that is what humans do when they are lost far from home. He met her eyes and held them, letting her see everything he had been hiding. But I am tired of doing what I am supposed to do. For once in my life, I want to do what I actually want. And what do you want? Alindra asked. Her voice trembling. Marcus smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes for the first time in longer than he could remember. I want to stay. I want to stand beside you and learn more about your people and watch you become the greatest queen the sovereignty has ever known. I want to spend nights in the garden talking about everything and nothing. I want to build a life here with you, even though everyone will say it is impossible. Tears were streaming down Alindra's face, but she was smiling. That is what I want too, she said, her voice breaking with joy. That is all I have ever wanted. Then stop asking me to stay, Marcus said softly, squeezing her hand, and start asking me to come home. The acceptance ceremony was held 3 days later in the Great Hall of the Sovereignty Palace. Every noble family sent representatives to witness the event. The Terran ambassador attended with a face like thunder, clearly unhappy but unable to prevent what was happening. Queen Silitha presided over the proceedings with the dignity of a ruler who had seen empires rise and fall. Marcus stood in the center of the hall, wearing formal robes that had been specially made to fit his human frame. The fabric was silver and white, matching the colors of the royal house, and he wore his military medals on his chest as a reminder of who he was and where he came from. Alindra stood opposite him, radiant in robes of deep violet that made her skin glow like captured moonlight. Her forearms were adorned with ceremonial jewelry, and her eyes never left his face. Commander Marcus Cole of the United Terran Defense Corps, Queen Silitha announced, her voice carrying through the silent hall. Princess Alindra has invoked Selvathani and claimed you as her bonded guardian. Do you accept this claim willingly and without reservation? Marcus looked at Alindra, seeing not a princess or an alien, but simply the woman he loved. I accept, he said, his voice strong and clear. Willingly and without reservation. Then speak the words of bonding, the queen commanded, and let the universe witness your choice. Marcus had spent days learning the ancient Valari phrases, practicing them until they felt natural on his human tongue. Now he spoke them with perfect pronunciation and complete sincerity. I give myself to you not because I must, but because I choose. My strength is your strength. My loyalty is your loyalty. My heart is your heart. From this day until my last day, I am yours. Alindra spoke her own vows, her voice ringing through the hall like music. I accept you not as a servant, but as an equal. My burdens are your burdens. My joys are your joys. My future is your future. From this day until my last day, you are mine. Queen Silitha raised her hands, and the entire hall seemed to hold its breath. The Selvathani is complete. Let no one question this bond or challenge this choice. Commander Marcus Cole is now and forever a member of the royal house, bound to Princess Alindra by ties stronger than blood or duty. The hall erupted into a mixture of cheers and shocked murmurs, but Marcus barely heard any of it. He was too focused on Alindra as she stepped forward and took his hands in hers. Welcome home, she whispered, her smile brighter than any star. The Terran ambassador left the next morning, carrying a message that would change the relationship between humanity and the Valari forever. Marcus Cole was not coming home. Instead, he had become the first human to be formally adopted into an alien royal family. The implications for diplomacy were staggering, and the politicians on Earth would argue about what it meant for years. But the message also carried something else. An invitation from Queen Silitha for formal alliance talks between the Valari sovereignty and the United Terran government. Humanity had just secured its first permanent ally among the older races of the galaxy. Not through military strength or economic pressure, but through something far more powerful, through a soldier who would learn that courage was not just about fighting. It was also about staying. It was also about love. In the garden beneath the light-blooming tree, Marcus and Alindra sat together watching the 3 moons rise.